Welcome to another episode of the Kumble Korner. This is the Border-Gavaskar Trophy preview. I am Super Joshi, joined by KK, ESPN cricket info writer, and Nakul Pande as well. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you, Joshi?
I'm good. Nakul, last week we were talking about Pakistan quite a lot because obviously we're talking about the Champions Trophy. And we're going to be talking about Australia today. And those countries are both that perhaps Indians, let's just say, don't particularly like, which made Usman Khawaja, who's both Pakistani and Australian, something of an anomaly because I actually really like him. And I've liked him a lot for a long time. So he manages to be both Pakistani and Australian, but still get a lot of respect from me and a lot of Indians as it happens. So that means he's like a stand-up geezer. I think we definitely like him as a bloke. As for the rest of the Australians and the Indian team, gentlemen, what are your thoughts on this series and also the first test that Rohit Sharma has conveniently decided to avoid by having a baby?
I think the baby had quite a bit of say in the matter, to be honest.
The baby's like, I wasn't asked to be born, during the preparations for the test series. I could have come, during an IPL window. But anyway, let's.
I didn't ask to be born. The lament that many a bowler have had watching Usman Khawaja grind out another 100. Yes. It's fascinating how most of the major cricketing outlets have essentially dominated. Their coverage has been dominated by trying to work out what India's team is going to be from the nets, which is not something I've seen on this scale before. You have writers, you have some writers and some journalists who very, very closely watch net sessions and try and sort of read the tea leaves and try and work it out from there. It's very unusual for it to become essentially the main coverage. And I suppose what it does tell you is that for a team with a very, very good record, for a team that's won twice in Australia, that's coming. The run has been ended now by New Zealand, but it's coming off a very, very good run at home over a very long time. There are more holes in this Indian team than you might expect for a very good team, and some of them are obviously injury enforced.
And more coming during the nets or during this practice session, right? The preparations, Gill and Kale.
Well, certainly one almost. Yeah, Shuman Gill having his thumb fractured trying to take a low catch. Although the Indian management are now saying he's not quite ruled out, but probably ruled out for the Perth Test match. And then Prasidh Krishna hit KL Rahul on the elbow, but KL Rahul seems to have recovered, and seemingly just won't go away. He's always there, always just about fit enough, always doing just about okay enough, and there's a hole for him somewhat. I would love to see an analysis of how many test matches he has played where someone has got injured in the week before.
Kale reminds me of my,
because I suspect it will be a lot.
He reminds me of my school career. I did just about enough to get by. That's what he is. KK.
Yeah.
So, Nick, you going to say something else?
Yeah, it looks now like it's going to be KL Rahul and Yashasvi Jaiswal opening the batting in Perth, which is probably not what anybody would have expected.
KK, are you one of the people who've been trying to predict this the lineup, or have you just been laughing at your colleagues who've been trying to do that? Or do you actually know because you're on crystal ball?
I don't, and it's kind of nice to be in that space ahead of a big series where you're thinking of every possible combination and every outlandish idea. Part of my brain thinks that either at number 3 or somewhere else they're going to have Washington Sundar playing up the order and maybe 2 other spinners. So for a Perth test, you're going to have 3 spinners. Okay, that's probably not going to happen, but it's the kind of build-up where you're thinking of all of these possibilities, and that's quite something.
Right. Well, I think that's probably a time to to just remind our listeners to hit like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast, either on YouTube or anywhere else. Just hit follow. And also tell your friends about this amazing podcast and share all of our socials, Kumble Korner, both with Ks, wherever you find it. So, okay, we've solved the openers problem. Or we've created a new problem, either way. Kale and Jeswal. Number 3?
It's the talk is very heavily of Devdutt Particle. I did note that Sanjay Manjrekar had Dhruv Jurel at number 3, but it's looking very heavily like it's going to be Devdutt
Has
Particle
Jurel ever batted at 3?
because of the injury to
Has
Shubman
Jurel ever
Gill.
batted at 3? Anyway.
Off the top of my head, I don't think so. I think because he's a wicketkeeper,
Exactly.
he bats in the middle order for his state side. I mean, look, Rohit Sharma had opened in 3 first-class innings in his entire career before becoming a Test opener, so it's not as though there isn't precedent.
Yeah, at least got the skills
for something like that. Dhruv Jurel has impressed everybody, it seems, in Australia, both in the tour games and in the nets. One of the reasons, by the way, that Abhimanyu Ishwaran, it seems, is likely not to be playing this first test is because there were some lingering concerns about his abilities against pace and bounce, and he appears not to have assuaged anyone that those regarding those doubts. But it's looking like it's going to be Devdutt Particle at number 3. Then it does look as though the talk is very heavily that Sarfaraz Khan is not going to be playing this first test, which I do wonder, in the same way that you hear a lot of Australian cricketers in the 90s and 2000, well, in the 90s, saying that they were relieved every time England left out Devon Malcolm. I do wonder a little bit if Australia do win this series, if we're going to have Australian cricketers on podcasts saying that I can't believe they left out Sarfaraz because of his ability to take attacks apart, his ability to score really quickly. He's the kind of cricketer that I can see Australia really warming to, and Australia having I say an outside respect. I like Sarfaraz Khan a lot as a cricketer, and I'm a big proponent of him being a part of this Indian middle order for time to come. But he's the kind of cricketer you can really see Australia taking to because of that aggression and that attacking mindset. It looks as though Dhruv Jurel is going to be batting at number 6, and every time he's and again I think we talked about this last week, that you would love to find a way of getting Jurel and Pant into the same 11. I think I actually said it would be nice to get Jurel and Pant into the same 11, but you would have to drop Sarfaraz to do it, and I don't want to do that. Well, it seems that India.
So you're the reason that Shubman got injured.
Well, you do. I don't know if I can't remember the time. Did he get injured? Did he get injured before or after? I can't remember.
It was after.
I will claim the. I'll claim. No, I won't claim that. Whichever way it goes, I like Shubman Gill. I'm afraid of his dad as well. But it looks as though India do want to do that. They do want to drop Sarfaraz, and Dhruv Jurel is someone who seems to have it. He seems to exude a kind of calm and confidence in the Indian middle order. Then Bumrah and Siraj are nailed on, and then there seem to be a lot of ideas about what to do with the lower middle order and the rest of the bowling attack.
KK, what are your thoughts on Sarfaraz? Do you think he will be left out as well?
The signs point to that. I mean, I have conflicting feelings on this. I really like him as a player, and he scored a 150 couple of tests ago. So and showed a sort of innovative side to his game where he was scoring a lot of runs behind the wicket of the fast bowlers and stuff, which you can say either like a risk in Australian conditions, or it could be a way for someone to score really quickly in Australian conditions. So could go both ways. I'm conflicted because I would really like to see him in the side, but I do, having watched both of them, I do really want Dhruv Jurel to play as well. And there is a situation where both could play if like one of them bats at 3, and probably that would be my ideal combination here. But then again, would I maybe try to put in another all-rounder
So
in
are you playing
which?
Joshi or not?
So yeah, I mean, yeah,
Obviously, I
that's
think you have to because he is
yeah.
a
I mean,
state boy.
Washi is the kind of guy who can bat in the top order,
Mhm.
and his bowling form. I mean, he's bowling better than he's ever bowled. So would he, would the theoretical extra runs that a specialist batter scores in that position be weighed? I mean, like, would you how do you weigh that against a possible bowling benefit that he also brings? But then again, how much is he gonna bowl on what promises to be a fast and bouncy pitch where you probably don't need more than one spinner?
But could he
So
exploit? Could he
lots of
come in?
questions. Yeah,
I mean, look, assuming that Australia, uh, the batsmen are on form because it's at home, and maybe the fast bowlers need a bit of a break. You're going to bring your frontline spinner on anyway. But would it not be handy perhaps to have another
yeah.
spinner who could probably just exploit the bounce a little bit? Um,
Hmm.
as something probably could. I mean, or would you? And if no, do you think he can get in purely on his batting? There's two parts to that question, KK.
I think he could potentially. I don't know what the team management thinks of his batting vis-a-vis Sarfaraz or whoever else is there in that in that middle order. I mean, then again, like batting in the top three is a very different thing to batting as Washington has done in Test cricket,
Let's
7 and 8.
let's
Yeah,
assume he doesn't get into the top three. I think it's fairly safe to say he's not a top three batter yet. I
yeah.
don't
But
think so.
do
He
you
is.
start a series with uh, either Dhruv Jurel, who's never batted in the top three there, or Sarfaraz, weirdly, who's never batted in the top? I think they're looking at
I think
Padikkal
Drew's done
simply
more.
because that's where he tends to bat and has those kinds of skills, and they kind of trust that a little more. I know Washington scored 100 at number three for Tamil Nadu just before he came back to the Test team. Yeah, I mean the reason why I'm so conflicted is that all of these options have their merits, and they, I'm sure the team management is as conflicted, or maybe a little less so because they're watching how these guys are shaping up. But I'm sure there is a bit of conflict in their minds as well. But you were
Bowling
asking
wise.
about
Oh yeah, sorry for
the lower
spinning. Yeah,
middle
go on.
order.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, go for
we
low mid order.
we came here from there, I think, and we're hearing talk that Ashwin might play. And again, there's merit to that as well. He was one of their best
It's
bowlers
wild.
in.
It's wild, by the way, that we're talking. There is merit in again in one of India's all-time greatest bowlers playing.
There
Well,
you go.
KK, I
Yeah.
said last time. KK, last time I said that, like flippantly, really, that Ashwin should be the other opener with Jaiswal because that would solve the problem of getting him into the team. Uh, Look, his batting is not good enough, but it becomes difficult with Jadeja and Ashwin. But I think purely on bowling alone, Ashwin's going to play right ahead of Jadeja.
My
You've
my
got to
my,
probably
my
drop
feeling
Jadeja.
from my feeling from what I'm hearing about the net sessions is that Jadeja hasn't been bowling all that much.
Okay.
Yeah, the
So
the talk is that he hasn't really bowled much for the last few days. It's very difficult to.
don't know. Yeah,
It's
don't
very
know
very.
whether he's carrying some sort of niggle, basically.
It's very very difficult to know exactly what that means because it could mean that they're considering playing him essentially as a specialist batter, as a specialist sort of number seven
Hmm.
batter. It could mean that they're not planning on him bowling. It could mean that they are planning on him bowling and they're trying to kind of throw people off the scent, or they think that he's going to play and we want one other spinner to play, so essentially it's going to be a bowl off between Ashwin and Washington. This is kind of why this becomes a little bit like tea leaf reading, a little bit. This can be a little bit overdone, but I do think there is merit in this. I think that Australia would look at a lineup without Ashwin and feel a little bit of a sense of relief that Ashwin isn't in it, particularly when you consider the amount of left-handers that they've got. You think of Travis Head, you think of Usman Khawaja, you think of Alex Carey, and some of the lower order as well. And Ashwin has done very well in Australia on the last two tours. He's kind of helped. He's played significant roles in India winning Test matches in Australia. Nathan Lyon has had a very good record at Perth, and again, if you want a spinner to exploit bounce, Ashwin is absolutely your man. He could happily come on first change with the new ball.
Yeah.
The wild card in all of this is an option that India haven't had for a while. A seam bowling all-rounder, Nitish Kumar Reddy, to essentially do the Shardul role. And
you read my mind there, because that was going to be my next question, because obviously we're missing Lord Tucker this time. And he's been useful in Australia and in England. And in terms of the fast bowlers, then actually that was going to be the next question. Fast bowler setup or the pace attack, what are we going with for Perth? And we're going to take it test by test because, like you said, tea leaf reading. There are so many unknowns, and it's a 5-match series, and the teams are going to change. It's a squad.
Yeah, I mean, there's injuries, and there's talk of Mohammed Shami coming back for the second. Let's
discount that. That's insane. That's about as sensible as all of the Champions Trophy talk. Like, it's ridiculous. The guy's been out for a year. That's not to say it won't happen, but it's quite ridiculous to force someone to do that when he is one of the stalwarts of your side. You don't want to risk injury to him.
I was saying to you guys in the group chat, it is ridiculous. It flies in the face of all cricketing logic. It's something India have done repeatedly with previous fast bowlers, rushing them back too fast. But I've seen a grainy highlight reel of him bowling, and now I want him.
That's true. I said to you, it's giving me like PTSD related to Bhuvi, because I think that's pretty much what happened to him. Was it when he bowled in a Test match in the morning, and by the afternoon couldn't? I think it was in England or something, and he didn't play for the rest of the Test match. That's the kind of stupidness
and hasn't played a
happens.
Test match since.
Yeah, and it's just at a certain level you've got to also think of pastoral care as well. It's not right for the player. You just can't do that to people, and you need to give the guy also, given his age and the type of bowling he does, he needs time to build up fitness, match fitness, stamina, all the rest of it. Even if he's just come back and destroyed the opposition, because let's be honest, he is Mamisham.
Yeah. My preference, my quite strong preference for the third fast bowler spot would be Prasidh Krishna. Because of his height, because of his ability to move the ball awkwardly off a length, and I think also the setup is actually kind of perfect for him, because if you want advice from someone as a tall bowler on how to pitch it up that little bit further, which is what you need to do in Australia, you need to pitch it up that little bit further than you think you do, because top of the stumps is a fuller length in Australia than it is in a lot of other countries. You could not ask for a better person to talk to than India's current bowling coach, Morne Morkel, who went from a very good, very pretty bowler who was awkward to face but didn't get very many wickets, to someone who was absolutely devastating in the last few years of his career because he found a way to pitch the ball up that little bit more. And you could do a very, very good supercut of a group of very good batters talking about how they hated facing Morne Morkel. And I think Prasidh Krishna has a little bit of that to him. If you look at tallest,
if you look at your tall bowlers, you think of like Tina Natarajan, you think Prasidh Krishna, Ishant Sharma. These guys have typically done well in Australia. Well, Natarajan only really had the one Test, but these guys have done well in Australia.
And
Go on. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Like, if India had Shami fit, if India had Rohit Sharma and Shubman Gill fit, and they looked at the conditions they were going to play in, I think and if Jadeja was bowling, and there's no question around like his availability, I think you'd be going into this series thinking, okay, India going to play 4 fast bowlers, India going to play 1 spinner, and this is what it's going to roughly be. The problem is that if they play 4 fast bowlers, they're going to have 2, one of whom will be a debutant, either Nitish Kumar Reddy or Harshit Rana. And Prasidh Krishna has played very, very little Test cricket before this. and slash or there's Akashdeep who's not played again that much, who's never played overseas. So these are the choices India have, and therefore, and they've all impressed in various ways. Like Prasidh had a great like A series, and from all accounts, Rana has been hugely impressive in the sort of intra-squad simulations that they've done. And Akashdeep has looked really good, albeit in Indian conditions, in his Test career so far. So it's just a guessing game from where we're sitting, and there's got to be no right answer if they go in and somebody has a terrible game, which could happen. And yeah, that's the
So are
problem
you
for
going with?
India is that. Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, so
Who
you're
am I
going
going with?
with four
Yeah.
fast bowlers, one spinner and one part-time
Yeah.
spinner. So what you're saying?
I think I'd be very tempted to go with two spinners simply because of the amount of inexperience in that fast bowling attack,
Mhm.
and hope that the sun is out through the 5 days, and the spinners kind of really come into the game in some way on days 3, 4, whatever.
Even if they're
And I'd play
bowls, just even if they're bowling straight ones that bounce a bit, that might be. I mean, if you're a bit quicker, look, this is where
and
Anil Kumble would have been great because he had that a bit more speed and was essentially.
There's very few conditions in which Anil Kumble wouldn't have been great, let's be honest.
Sure, but I mean, in the sense of a medium pacer who doesn't spin the ball as much as say other spinners, like would bounce, and a tall guy.
If you're looking at it that way, I quite like that line of logic from KK. So let's say that you go with Bumrah, Siraj. I'm sticking with Prasidh Krishna. It could be any of them. I'd like it to be Prasidh Krishna, but it could be any of them. And then Ashwin. And then essentially your other choice becomes Nitish Kumar Reddy or one of the spinners. So then your question is the argument about Nitish Kumar Reddy, obviously another seam bowler, probably someone who can essentially take away some overs from Bumrah when you're going to need him for the rest of the series. The question, there's a very open. His batting is not really being talked about as much.
So look, that was the thing I was going to ask you. So essentially, with the three people I guess we're looking at for this spot would be Reddy, Jadeja, and Sundar. All of them are very handy with the bat. So they actually would bolster both the bowling and the batting pretty well, actually. Go on then, wax lyrical about Reddy's batting.
Nitish Kumar Reddy has a first-class batting average of 21. So this guy is a bowler who can bat, really. Even more so than Jadeja or Sundar or Ashwin is, who really at international level, Ashwin kind of straddles the line between all-rounder and bowler who can bat. Jadeja, I think you can safely say, is a true all-rounder, and Washington Sundar's Test career has been so stop-start, it's quite hard to tell. I'm not convinced that Nitish Kumar Reddy gives you enough with the bat at number 7 or 8 to justify what seems to be a fairly serious bowling downgrade from either Jadeja or Washington Sundar. I have always liked going in with Ashwin and Jadeja. Despite the fact Jadeja is a very, very fine bowler, would be a contender for an all-time Indian 11 and one of a really, really fine all-rounder. In a sense, in the first 3 days of a Test match on a flat to seamer-friendly pitch, the fact that he can bowl is a bonus. But came from. Because I've muted myself. Where is that coming?
Hearing some echoes as well.
Yeah, where's that? Oh, it seems to have stopped now.
Yeah.
I think my headphones just cut off. Sorry.
Okay. Edit point.
Am I back? I'm on here. Sorry. Yeah. Back.
You never went away.
Okay, no, I think my headphones disconnected. That's fine. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, let's start that point again. I always like the idea of going in with Ashwin and Jadeja. Nitish Kumar Reddy's batting, are you getting enough out of him to compensate for the fact that you're purely stylistic on the fact that he is a seam bowler, to compensate for the fact that you're probably, in terms of output, not getting as much out of him as you are going to get out of Jadeja or Ashwin or Washington Sundar.
Sure, but he's a better batsman than the other bowlers.
The two spinners thing, I've had this argument a few times with people that kind of, why play two spinners in England? Why play two spinners in Australia? The argument is, for me, that Jadeja is almost good enough to get into the team, probably is good enough to get into the team as a number 7 batter. And despite the fact that he's got well over 300 test wickets, the fact he would be close to an all-time India 11, despite the fact that he has been one of the premier all-rounders in the world for a while, on the first 3 days on a seamer-friendly or flat-ish pitch, the fact that he can bowl is a bonus, which is a strange thing to say, but really, you are probably going to get the bulk of your work from your main 3 fast bowlers and your spinner, who I would like to be to Ashwin. So I'm with KK on this. I would like to see Jadeja at 7 and Ashwin at 8, and then the 3 fast bowlers.
I wholeheartedly agree. I think that should have been the case even in the World Test Championship finals when Ashwin wasn't played both times, regardless of the fact that yes,
the first one.
He and Jadeja played the first one. They lost, and then that was used as an excuse, seemingly, to drop Ashwin for the 4 tests of the England series.
Sorry,
I think that situation is a slightly nuanced one, which is that the two of them played and they kind of announced their 11 before the match, and then there was rain, and I think day 2 was effectively day 1 or something like that.
And Jadeja barely bowled.
Jadeja barely bowled. Ashwin bowled beautifully, and he was probably India's best bowler in that game. But then they realized, as you know, that they just couldn't match New Zealand's seam bowling depth in those conditions. And wherever they went on that tour after that, the pitches were roughly similar. So they were like, we have to go 4-1. But then the one spinner, you're picking him primarily for his batting because your 4 fast bowlers were either number 11s or one of them was Shardul Thakur, who, can't bat at, say, 7.
And then surprise, Bumrah and Shami, it turns out, can slog a few. But, I mean, Jadeja barely bowled for the first 3 tests of that series.
Yeah, so then they were getting as much out of Jadeja as they needed to.
But it was also they were masking their batsman's failure, really, in those conditions, is what they were doing.
Well, no, not really. I mean, you do need your number 7 to be able to, bat to a certain degree.
Well, I think what Joshi is saying is that they dropped Ashwin. Of course. They dropped Ashwin essentially because they didn't want to drop one of the batters. Is that the reason India lost that WTC final is because the batting didn't handle Jameson and Bolt and Southey very well.
No, I just think their bowling didn't match up to New Zealand's in those conditions. And in order to kind of bridge that, when the series against England began, they were like, we're going to go 4-1 unless there's some sort of pitch that makes us think of bringing in a second spinner. So that thinking was sound, and they had to unfortunately leave out the spinner who bowled really well for batting reasons, because they didn't have a Nitish. I mean, I kind of disagree on the how much will Nitish Kumar Reddy bring with the bat argument. Not saying he should play. I just think that they've watched him in the IPL and they've watched him handle himself against really good bowling, and he played a couple of usefulish knocks like 30s. There was a partnership with Dhruv Jurel in the India game as well. And I think on raw ability, right, not so much on his record, which you're right, he averages 21, but sometimes players kind of blossom a little later, or they pick very young and then they take their time to kind of start putting the numbers on the board. I think having watched him and just on how he looks on the eye test, he's a better batter than a Shardul Thakur and could theoretically bat at 7 if required. So which brings the possibility of playing him as a fourth seamer and Ashwin as your main spinner. It makes that possible because on
And
that
Jaiswal
England tour
bowling
they
a
didn't
few.
have that kind of player. They didn't have
Would you say
Hardik
that?
Pandya.
Well, I mean, they tried to
Yeah,
manufacture it with Shardul Thakur.
yeah, but they
Yeah.
manufactured a guy who could bat at 8,
Yeah.
and therefore they had to play Jadeja even when even if I don't know if they did think that, but even if they did think that Ashwin would bring more with the ball.
Yeah, I mean, you could
Yeah.
conceivably, and it's not impossible to imagine that Ashwin batting at 7 and Nitish Kumar Reddy batting at 8 either.
Yeah.
But neither of those is probably quite good enough as a test match number 7. I mean, ultimately, if you are the top order, the Indian top order has to, both top orders have to stand up for either of their teams to win. So a lot of this test match will be determined in how India's sort of slightly cobbled together top 5 handles a world class attack in their own conditions.
It could turn out to be just the difference between how well Marnus and Jaiswal bowl. You never know. Just a random little few overs.
I think that might. I mean, you bring that point up lightheartedly, but that could be an issue for Australia going into the series, where India are going to play 5 bowlers, more or less always.
Mm-hmm.
Australia would have had that if Cam Green was fit. They have Mitchell Marsh, who doesn't bowl as much as he can in theory.
His body really won't allow him to do any serious amount of bowling, and it does kind of look like their fifth bowler is some combination of Marnus and Travis Head. And I quite like this little exchange that's come out recently, is that Pat Cummins has essentially told Marnus Labuschagne to stop bowling medium pace and go back to leg spin. But every time he gets a chance, Marnus wants to bowl his medium pace in the nets and bowl bouncers.
Yeah. So that could be I mean, if India managed to stay in the series, say the scoreline isn't disastrous by the time they get to the third test.
I'm trying to stay into the first day of the game, of the first test match. The series is a whole other series, another question. I'm not even sure we'll be in it after the first day.
It's very interesting to see how the pessimism and the gloom has transferred from that New Zealand series. I obviously that has scared some people, and people are looking at the absentees, and people are looking at the all of the things that could potentially go wrong. I don't look at this series, and I look at this series and like the previous Australia-India series, and I see a really close, really quite hard to call series looking ahead at these 5 test matches.
If I'm self-reflecting, part of it is down to the mad injuries. I think there's, but also just the amount of kind of bullish media appearances that the Australians have done, like just random internet bits and podcasts and stuff, and they really seem whether they're kind of going to manifest it by talking a good game. That's partly what I'm thinking. Hold on, these guys are not. They don't seem as meek as they did last time. They didn't seem. Last time they were in a bit of a chaos. They had a temporary captain, as we know, and they didn't. And this time, I think they're a different proposition under Cummins' leadership. I think that's probably what it is. In terms of maybe abilities and the rest of it, probably not. But I think there's a certain leadership quality that Cummins is bringing that maybe makes them slightly better than the sum of their parts.
I think, look, they're a good team, and I think their parts. The parts you're summing up are pretty good to start with. Pat Cummins is a very good leader.
But I think Cummins I think he takes them up another level. Is what I'm saying.
I don't disagree with that. I think they're a better team than they were when India came in 2021 and especially in 2018. I think that's fairly clear. But they've also got Nathan McSweeney. They'll have a debutant opener. The middle orders had to be rejigged.
But he's been tonking it in the A games.
He's been doing well. He's been doing well, but it is still an opener on Test debut facing Jasprit Bumrah, or Ashwin or whoever else it is, and you will expect India to try and put a lot of pressure on him. You have a slightly rejigged middle order without Cameron Green. You have Stephen Smith, who's now back down in the middle order, having spent a lot of time as an opener, and is not the player with the aura that that was the case when India last toured. We were talking before we came on air about Marnus Labuschagne and the fact that he hasn't kicked on to that next level to go from a good to a potentially great player. Hasn't done particularly well. Hasn't done particularly well in the Sheffield Shield before the start of this. How much that matters is an open question. But and then you have a potentially really formidable middle order with Head and Mitch Marsh and Carey, all of whom have been in the runs over the last year or so, and probably Travis Head is Australia's best, certainly most destructive batter. But
not least because he's got a Bollywood hero moustache. That's why.
Or Bollywood supervillain moustache. Yeah, it absolutely helps. And then you have a world class bowling attack, as we know. But
at home,
sure, at home, and I think Australia probably do start slight favourites, if only because they're at home. But I just don't look at this series and see that it's anything India should be scared of, or they don't have the tools to win this series or compete very strongly in this series. I just don't. That is not the vibe that this series is giving me going into it.
It's not about the tools. It's just we've been here before where India, on paper and even practically, should be doing better, but sometimes just on the day it just doesn't turn out right, and that's more what it is. I guess we were maybe it's an overcorrection for myself in particular, and probably a lot of others, where New Zealand, we knew New Zealand would. I thought it'd probably be 2-1. I didn't think 3-0, but that was a bit of a wow. Maybe we are a bit shell shocked from that point of view. But yes, look, I would hope to win some games, and I think Ashwin deserves another crack at the WTC final. To be honest, guys, I think we've kind of come to the conclusions generally of what the team's going to be, right? I think we're all kind of agreeing here. Three pacers, 2 spinners, and whoever else up top, at least Jarrell in there somewhere.
I wouldn't be surprised at all if it's Nitish Kumar Reddy, 3 seamers and 1 spinner. I would like it to be 2 spinners, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if it were
KK.
If it were 4.
Yeah, I'd go with that as well. Like
KK, would you go with Krishna as well as the third choice?
As my third seamer.
Third seamer, yeah, sorry.
Third seamer, I would actually go with Bumrah, Siraj, Akashdeep, the 3 who are in possession, I guess. Siraj, he on his day he can run through a top order. On another day he can look a little flat. But
he'll be a different proposition.
He's the one guy out of the.
He'll be a different proposition in Australia. I said he'll be a different proposition in Australia
from what he was
in New Zealand,
against New Zealand. I think to put it very broadly, I think this is a completely different series to New Zealand, and whatever happened there happened, and I don't think any conclusions can be drawn that can be taken forward into this series.
I think the conclusions are more around mindset and Gothi's ability to lift as anything else. I think that's what it is. It's not necessarily that New Zealand will translate that. That was a different proposition, but I think there is something to be said about inexperience. And obviously, Knuckles mentioned this a couple of times over the last few episodes about mindset and ability to course correct during the course of a test match. That I think is the concern, and I'm sounding like a negative Nelly here, but
So you say mindset and ability to bounce back and stuff. For me, I mean, I think all of that comes with experience, and that's the biggest worry for India. In that, especially in their fast bowling, they don't have a lot of that.
The batting, you say that, sure, but DSB and Bumrah, they've had a few series abroad. They should know. It's just the third one, I guess. And
very often India's, historically, right from the 90s into, say, that horror period of 2011-12 and various other points, the issue that India have had is that they have 1 or 2, world-class or pretty much world-class fast bowlers, but the third seamer is where the control goes away. The match kind of starts running away from India at a very rapid rate. And then the spinner comes on and it's like you know,
What are you supposed to do with this?
what are you
It's too
supposed to do
late.
with the situation you brought me into? So that's been historically India's biggest weakness, which when they had Bumrah, Ishant Shami, or Bumrah, Siraj Shami on in their most successful phase, that problem went away for a while. Now the biggest problem for India is, has that problem come back, or are these new guys good enough to kind of plug that hole and be like, no, we can maintain that intensity, we can maintain that pressure on the opposition through an entire day's worth of bowling, and if they can do that, they'll compete.
Yeah, I
I
think
know
it's probably a little
the
bit fear with the
pitches.
third.
We kind of expect the pitches to be pretty lively, certainly for Perth.
Hmm.
Maybe
Hmm.
that takes away some of that because those pitches in 2011 and 2014 were very, very flat.
Hmm. Hmm.
We don't really see pitches like that in Test cricket anymore. And I
It's
was
a
looking the other day, in the last 5 years or so, only South Africa, I think it's only South Africa and India are harder, have a lower kind of mean
batting
average
average, right?
than Australia. So it hasn't been an easy place to bat, and
Yeah.
maybe that kind of flat or
Hmm.
takes away some of the issues of not being quite so experienced. Maybe
That's a
the other problem with
yeah.
the experience thing is it's hard to make any argument based on experience given what happened the last time India played a test in Australia. So
Yeah.
that kind of throws everybody's arguments off.
I
And also
just say
gives quite a lot of hope, I suppose.
I
I
do see
just
what
say that
yeah
sorry, you finish. Yeah.
I do see what you're saying, Karthik, about you can foresee absolutely a scenario where Australia get through Bumrah and get through Ashwin and then put pressure on Siraj and let's say Prasid or Akash and Nitish Kumar Reddy and render a bowler unbowlable, which is the kind of thing that has happened before. You can absolutely see that scenario. I think what makes this too so exciting for me is that the fact that there are a lot of really plausible scenarios that you can see propping up just in this test, let alone the next 5 tests. I'm genuinely looking forward to the series more than I have for a test series in a while.
Well, I think that's a great way to end the show, pretty much. KK, last word, please.
Yeah, sorry.
Not
You
series,
brought
the
up this
podcast.
point of the lively pitches. And an interesting one because yes, in theory it can kind of narrow the gap between the two fast bowling attacks. Uh, but the flip side of that is, I mean, for Australia, it's a bit of a conundrum, right? Where if they were to go slightly flatter pitches, I don't think they will, but if they were to go slightly flatter pitches, be like, our fast bowlers can outlast and outbowl India on these, then you give India more of a reason to play two spinners and be like, this match will go into days 4 and 5, and these two world class guys will really come into the game. So,
You've got one world class spinner, we've got 2.
yeah,
And it would be
that's
the
right.
equivalent of India bowling, giving real like spinny pitches in India and bringing the opposition spinners into it. It would be
Yeah,
that's what would happen.
nowhere near that extreme, but I think it could have some of that effect. And look, it's very possible to get carried away on and I think this is kind of what I'm saying. What's so delicious about this is there are so many. All of these arguments are absolutely, like you were saying about the selection. All of these arguments are absolutely plausible, and we just aren't going to. We have no way of like evaluating which is the more likely. They just sound kind of eternally logically consistent.
Yeah.
Exactly that. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I think we should probably leave it there. Basically, we've talked a lot, solved a lot, and solved nothing. We'll find out how this goes. With any luck, just for my amusement, there will be 2 spinners and 3 fast bowlers, and hopefully Jesswell doesn't need to bowl. That would be the ideal situation. Guys, thank you for your insights and giving me some hope in my kind of depressive state today and worrisome states. I guess we'll see what happens at the Wacker. Is it at the Wacker? It's a new pitch, new stadium.
Optus.
The Optus.
Yes. Either way, edit that out.
Isn't it administered by the Western Australia Cricket Association in
They
any
could
case?
have called it the new Wacker.
Yeah.
They needed the money from the phone provider.
Fair enough. All right. Anyway, either way, it's in Perth. We'll see what happens in Perth, and we'll of course be back with a review of this match and a review of the IPL auction and any other shenanigans that happen. Because, as we know, it's Indian cricket. Loads of stuff is going to happen all the time. Don't forget to check us out on the socials. Kumble Korner with 2Ks. Like and subscribe this wherever you're watching or listening. Ciao for now.